Hey listeners, welcome back to another out-of-world news story with Unraveled Tales. Today's story is about Wife Begged Me. Let me tell you what happened, and if you want to throw me out, I'll pack and leave. Can she explain? We'll go to the story and see what happened in next. He couldn't lose it. Everything, his marriage, his future, his dreams, everything relied on him being able to keep cool. Susan and I need to talk, Early thought. After re-entering the house, he found Susan staring into space, unmoved from the chair she was in. After several minutes of trying to get her to talk, Early realized his anger was getting to him again. I should leave and cool down, was his only thought. Early left the house with no direction, no purpose, just driving through town aimlessly. But he soon found himself in John Stickler's neighborhood. With a sick fascination, Early found himself parking at Stickler's house and then knocking at his door. Soon, a distinguished older gentleman opened the door. "Can I help you? I'm Early Conroy." Before Early could say any more, Stickler interjected. "Early, oh, of course, I must have seen your picture 1,000 times on Susan's desk. Sorry, but it's late at night, and after our trip, I know that I'm tired. Say, weren't you supposed to come in tomorrow? I know Susan was rushing back to her loving husband, and I don't know how much longer I will be her husband, Mr. Stickler." Early flatly interrupted. Stickler's openness had surprised him, but Early was determined to keep the upper hand. What? What do you mean? Susan said you two were so happy and I thought we were until she spent the last few days with you, Early interrupted again. The two men looked each other in the eyes. Concern crossed John's face as he watched Early's stony visage. Then John's eyes light up with the realization. Oh God, you don't know. And oh God, no. You think, Ober. No, I would think the same thing. John shook himself out of his reverie. Early, you need to come in and sit down. I think I have to explain some things to you. Please do, Early said as he entered the house, and John closed the door behind him. Stunned, Susan sat for hours in the chair where Early had left her. Dimly she realized he had come back into the room, then later left. I remember hearing his car leave the driveway. How had this happened? What did happen? She kept asking herself. The shock of Early's presence and his accusations threatened to send her fragile mind over the edge. Desperate, she grabbed her keys and fled into the night. Update. Carchew, Jennifer wiped her nose again. The doc told me that these antibiotics would work. Stupid ducker. I can't get any sleep. My head feels like it's going to explode and... The ringing of her doorbell cut off Jennifer's latest list of complaints. The non-stop noise forced her to get up and stagger to the door. Susan, what's going on? Jennifer quickly forgot her own problems when she saw Susan, her mentor and hero, on her doorstep. Susan's normally immaculate makeup was in ruins, and she looked like she was about to faint. Jennifer helped Susan inside and got her a drink. After a bit, Susan seemed to calm down enough to talk. Susan, Jennifer asked, stroking Susan's hair. What's wrong? Did something happen to Early? Susan's body trembled as she fought to get the words out. He's left me. What? He came home Thursday, and I wasn't home. He thinks that John and I, that we've been. Susan could feel her world collapsing around her. What, Susan? You don't make sense. You left with John right after you told us that it was. Oh no, Susan. You didn't call Early and talk to him about it, did you? The look on Susan's face was enough for Jennifer. Oh, Susan, what have you? Ah, chow! Done! Jennifer's body shook with the force of her sneeze. After she regained control, she looked Susan in the eyes. Okay, Susan, what happened? And tell me everything. Early was seated on a leather couch in John Stickler's living room. John nervously entered the room and headed over to Early. Ah, here we go. I didn't have a Dr. Pepper, but I did have a Coke. It was warm, so I poured it over ice. Hope that is okay. John sat down after giving Early the drink. Okay, wow. This is strange. First, I want to say that your wife is a wonderful woman. Who has, John started to speak faster, seeing the reaction in Early's eyes, done nothing but talk about you the entire time I have known her. I think half the women in the office are jealous of her and the tales of her marriage. The other half just think she's making it up. John took in a deep breath to collect himself. Second, I am in love with Jennifer. I know this is news to you. I first noticed her while we were helping Susan with the case. Then over time, Jennifer just seemed to worm her way into my heart. I started finding reasons to be in Susan's office just to see Jennifer. I would show up early on purpose, just so that I would have time to chit-chat with her. Finally, I drew up my courage, prayed my late wife would understand, and I asked Jennifer out. It's been amazing ever since. John watched Early's face for a reaction, but none came. He should have been a lawyer, John thought, or a professional poker player with that visage. Well, until this week, see, I am trying to move on. I have this opportunity to work for a very powerful firm in Washington. It's their branch office, but I can't really pass this up. So Jennifer and I planned on going there for a few days, rub elbows with the firm members and their spouses, then spend the rest of the weekend taking in the sights. John got a faraway look in his eyes as he continued. Then Jennifer got sick. At first we thought it was just a cold, but it got worse and worse, turned into full-blown flu. Late Wednesday we were to fly out, but she was too sick to do much more than go to the doctors and get medicine. Both Susan and Jennifer told me to go. I had confided in Susan while she was talking about her hopes of possible getting promoted to a partner in the firm, but I didn't know. A nervous chuckle escapes from John's lips. First, I didn't want to leave Jen, and second, they were expecting 2 of us. I knew there was going to be at least 1 dinner, maybe 2, and a social meeting that were couples only. I didn't want to go by myself. I didn't know what it would look like for me to show up alone. John leaned forward and looked the stony Early in the eyes. I wasn't thinking straight, Early. I was worried about Jen, and then worried about this once in a lifetime. Never mind, Jen came up with the solution, Susan. She could be my guest, and as a fellow lawyer, could give them the straight talk about me. Well, we talked about it, and I swear, Early, I thought she talked to you about it. When we were about to leave Wednesday, I asked her if you were okay with this. I know how it could look. She swore that everything was okay. Seemingly in deep thought, Early asked, "So she went as your date?" John's eyes shot wide at Early's words. No! She was a fellow guest, Early. And when they found out that she was married, I know we got some looks until we told them about Jennifer, and that Susan was just a fellow colleague. I can tell you, Early, she talked you up one side and the other. I went to get a drink at one point, and passed her talking about you in glowing terms to the women there. Even the senator seemed to be eyeing her husband with a bit of, "Why can't you be like him?" Senator? Senators plural, really. I told you this was a major firm. The funny thing is Maxwell Adams, one of the partners, told me I could have come alone. It wasn't mandatory for me to have a date. They would have understood. Ironic, huh? Anyway, I know. Update 1. John hopped out of the chair and rushed out of the room. He quickly returned with a briefcase and started rummaging through it. Here we go. John handed over a paper to Early. You can see there that I paid for 2 rooms. Heck, they are even on different floors. That's what you get when you reserve them separately. Mine was nice, but I had to pay out the ears for hers. And you can even see the dates for reservation on the papers. For the first time, emotion crossed Early's face, a whiff of doubt. Yes, you. Sensing Early's reluctance, John seemed to search his mind. Then his eyes lit up and he rushed off game. Early could hear the rustling of papers, and John reappeared with the recycling bin in his hands. Here it is. John pulled out a newspaper and started searching through it. Finally, he found his page. He handed over the paper and pointed to the photo in it. It took a second, but Early made out Susan and another girl talking to each other behind one of Hollywood's stars in what appeared to be the entrance to a show. Sorry for the coffee stain, but here in the society and entertainment section, you can see Susan and what was her name? Kara? Recognition showed in Early's eyes. Kelly, that's Kelly. They were roommates in college. Kelly, yeah, I had tickets to a show, but didn't feel right going with Susan, so I gave her the tickets. She got her picture taken behind Mr. High and Mighty here. You know, I think that explains why she got so nervous when I showed it to her on the way back. John leaned toward Early. She really didn't tell you, did she? Concern showed clearly on his face. No, she didn't, Early sighed, his earlier bravado and will now deflated. He knew he should be overjoyed that Susan didn't cheat, but it hurts, doesn't it? For them not to trust you. I know. I went through a similar thing. Early looked at the man. A few years back, my wife, she started acting strange. At first, I thought she was just getting older. Then I started to worry about an affair. Did she love me? Everything imaginable went through my mind. Finally, I confronted her. Cancer. She didn't want to tell me, wanted to protect me. After I got over the shock and was caught up on her situation, we talked. It took a bit, but we both realized what we did wrong. I was her hero, and she didn't want to burden me, and I wanted to be her rock. John sighed. I am glad that we did talk. In the end, we didn't have anything separating us. For a minute, John seemed lost in his memories before he seemed to pull himself back together. Early, I have no idea why Susan didn't tell you. But nothing happened. I have nothing but respect for Susan and you. I mean, if I thought what you thought, I would probably have rushed in here and beat the, well, you know. Early leaned back on the couch. You know she loves you, Early, and I know you love her. Can't you get past this? Love's not the problem, John. How can I trust her? And then he left. Susan choked back her tears. He was gone when I finally could look around. I mean, how can he think that of me? I've never given him any reason to do so. Jennifer thought for a second. Maybe that is why he is having such a hard time, Susan. He's never had a reason to distrust you before, and now he does. He came home, and you weren't there, but you lied to him, pretending you were. What were you thinking? Susan sighed before responding. Susan, why would Early have a reason to distrust you? All you had to do was get a room to yourself, which you did, and talk to him every night. It's not that simple. Early left on a trip, then I suddenly have to go with John to DC. I mean, why not have him call me? Jennifer asked. Susan was startled by Jennifer's interruption. What? Come on, Susan. How big of a conspiracy would it have to be for him to call me and I cover for you? If he worried, and any good man would, it's their nature, then he could call me and know that everything was on the up and up. If he didn't, then you would have a paranoid control freak on your hands. But I don't think that's ever been the problem. So why didn't you tell him? Jennifer eyed Susan carefully. Susan's mind went blank. All her excuses, all the reasons to lie, she couldn't find them now. You didn't think you had to, no harm, no foul. You thought that you could do this, help John and me, and then get back home. You weren't hurting Early in any way directly. You didn't break a vow or hurt him in any form. So you could leave on the trip. Get John's help with the partnership which you're going to get anyway, and all would be good. This wasn't going how she thought it would. Why couldn't Jennifer understand? No, I was going to tell Early. When? When could you explain to him that you were lying to him? I could understand if you went out to get him a boat, and John was helping you pick one out, or you were going to a spa for treatments, and you wanted to wow him. But you didn't. What could you gain by lying that you couldn't get by telling the truth? And what could you say later on to make it look like lying to your husband was a good thing for the two of you? Jennifer retrieved a tissue and wiped her nose, then turned back to Susan. I know. You wanted Early to think that you got the partnership on your own, for him to be proud of you, but you were willing to do some extra to ensure it, to get more support. Update 2. Susan started to interrupt, but Jen stopped her. There is nothing you can say to cover up for lying to Early, Susan. Nothing. There was no reason to lie since you were doing nothing wrong. But you still lied to him. You didn't want him to think less of you for doing a favor for John. Susan sat back. The truth of her not ever being able to tell Early hit home. But was she trading favors? Her body started to shake as she told herself no. Jen, I would never do anything for a partnership but work for it. I did this to help John and to thank him for everything he did for me. I know, but how would it look to others? Jennifer inquired. Susan's face sank. Jennifer leaned on and took Susan's hand. And Susan, why didn't you explain this to Early when he was saying that you cheated on him? Why didn't you tell him the truth? But Jen, I couldn't. Susan started to sob. He was so insistent and I couldn't get the words out. Sus, you know how this makes you look in his eyes. You just confirmed everything he feared. I mean, he had your car at John's. You were not at home, and you lied to him about where you were. It's not a big stretch to imagine cheating with that evidence. Susan broke down in tears. Her world began to crumble around her. Jen got up and retrieved a fresh box of Kleenex. Susan, what is done. You'll have to deal with it sooner or later, but right now, we have to figure out something else. Susan looked at Jennifer, her eyes flooded with tears. What? How to prove you didn't cheat on Early and your marriage. Early quietly opened the door to the house. He didn't know how long he had been gone, but he didn't want to disturb Susan. The information he had gained weighed heavily on his mind. After leaving John's, he had drove around town for hours trying to get his head on straight. Finally, when he had to refuel, he returned home. Early dropped his keys on the table and absent-mindedly walked to the window. "It'll be dawn soon," he said, not to anyone, but more to himself to break the silence. "Yes, it will," Susan's voice startled Early. He spun around to find her at the hall doorway. Gone was the dress, replaced with sweats and one of Early's old t-shirts. Her face was freshly washed, but Early could still see the puffiness around her eyes. Early, please let me talk. I know I have hurt you by lying to you, but I swear it was never meant to hurt you and was done with what I thought at the time were the best of intentions. And before you say it, yes, I know the old saying about good intentions. Update 3. Susan motioned to the kitchen table. Let me tell you what happened, and if you want to throw me out, I'll pack and leave. I know that you don't have any reason to believe me, but please, for all the years we have been together, please give me this one chance. Early wanted to speak, but sensed that Susan needed to get something off her chest. Relenting, he sat down in a chair. Susan smiled as Early sat down. She gathered herself, then continued. As you know, Early, for the last several months I have been working on the case that would, if I could get it right, ensure that I finally become partner. It was the most difficult and involved thing I had ever done. Just when I thought I was lost, John Sticker started to lend a hand. I would have never made it if I didn't have him guiding me, helping me, assuring me. Susan saw Early wince at the words of her needing John's assurance. Slowly, another piece fell into place for her. Early, John and Jennifer started seeing each other during this time. I guess I should have told you, but I think we both were so wrapped up in our own professional lives we let things slide. But, Susan sighed, nothing accounts for me lying to you. See, John is trying to leave the firm, and it looks like he can get a really good position at a major firm in DC. He and Jen are doing so well. This weekend they were to go to DC to do the meet and greet thing. Then Jen got sick. Nothing seemed to work to fix her up. John was so worried, he didn't know if he should or could go, and he didn't want to leave Jen, even though she told him to go. Then she came up with an idea. Why didn't I go with John? Not as a date, but as a co-worker. Susan shrugged as she went on. I thought to myself, why not? I would be back before you came home, and John, well, he did help me so much. I wanted to help him. Why didn't you tell me, Susan? Early asked. His voice was just above a whisper, but it carried right to Susan's heart. Susan's lips started to tremble as tears threatened to erupt from her eyes. I've been asking myself that same question over and over. I think I told myself that you would worry about me. You would be suspicious of me. I mean, you leave on a trip, then I suddenly have to run off with John to attend some fancy dinners with him. Susan looked Early in the eyes. But that wasn't it. Let me finish first. Susan steeled herself. Well, I gathered my stuff while John got me a room, and I used Jennifer's ticket to fly. When we got to DC, well, when we went to the dinner, everyone at first thought I was John's wife, then his girlfriend, and we had to explain what happened. Susan gained a faraway look in her eyes. Strangely enough, one wife told me I had a dear for a husband. For you to let me go like that and help out John, how you had to trust me so well. Little did they know. I want you to know that it hurt to lie to you on the phone like I did, but in for a penny. But why Susan? Early asked, his eyes imploring her to tell him something he could hold on to. Susan's shoulders slumped as she tried to respond. I don't know, Early. I guess I wanted to prove that I could do anything. Prove that I didn't need you, or John, or anyone. I could do everything myself. I wanted to be the leader. But in reality, I was just being a child. I knew that you wouldn't have a problem, but I didn't want you to have the opportunity to tell me no. Susan's voice started to crack as she struggled to keep things under control. I had it all planned out on how to repay John for his kindness, then come home and be here for you, and then I could have done everything and no one get hurt. Susan looked at Early with teary eyes. But you came home early. I mean, I had already figured out that John didn't need me there. No one would bemoan a single man for coming across country alone for a dinner. I was just there to entertain the wives and the few successful women. All the time I could have been at home, with you it turns out. Susan's body shook with regret. I was out and about and didn't need you or you permission. But I never did I? You never doubted me, and this is how I treated you. Susan, what would you have done if Thursday, when I asked about the lonely bed, after you answered me I had said, "Yes, it is lonely here, Susan, just like it's been since I came home." Susan's eyes got wide in fear at Early. Her lower jaw trembled and her body shook. I never thought about that. I had convinced myself that you'd never find out. Susan hung her head in shame. I never thought beyond what I wanted to do. Both sat alone with their thoughts. After several minutes, Early spoke up. Susan, I think I'll quit my job, I'll go in Monday and... Susan blurted out before he could finish. Early's heart began to beat harder, and his face became flushed. No, Susan, you have worked too hard and too long for this partnership. John told me that it was in the bag for you. You talked to John? Susan couldn't keep the fear out of her voice. After I left Tony, last night now, I went driving, ended up at his house. He did the one thing that you weren't able or willing to do. He told me the truth. He told me about Jennifer and the new job and you helping him out. Now he could have been lying. You two could have come up with a plan to cover your tracks. I could believe that you, John and Jennifer, all are in this conspiracy against me. I could hold you to a standard where you can't prove your innocence. Final update. Early's words cut Susan to the core. She knew that there was nothing she could do. Every argument had a counter. Every bit of proof could be explained away. She began to feel weak as hope faded in her heart. But I won't. Early sighed. I have to start to learn to trust you, but you have. Early was cut off by a screech from Susan as she realized what her husband was saying. She launched herself across the room into his lap, wrapping her arms tightly around him. Eventually, Early was able to extract himself enough from her tearful grasp. Holding her in his arms, he looked in her tear and joy-filled eyes. This doesn't mean we're all right. We have problems. I should have told you I was home, but you shouldn't have lied. We have to work on this. Any sniff thing, Early. Oh, sniff you. Susan, Early said almost as a sigh, I think we need counselling together. We've both let things other than our love get involved in our marriage, but first I need you to get up. A blast of worry crossed Susan's face. But we. Susan, there is nothing major wrong, but I haven't been to the bathroom yet, and it's been a long night. And when you hopped into my lap... Susan started to giggle, then laugh as she got up. Soon her laughter infected Early, as he rushed to the restroom in the dawn's light. Well, how's the proud man? Early turned to see who was speaking. John Stickler was heading towards Early out of a side door to the church. Oh, not bad. Susan is the proud one, an entire baptism and not one peep out of the little angel. Not like Michael's, huh? Jennifer jokingly asked as she pulled up next to her husband. No, Jennifer, no it wasn't. Early said as he gave John's wife a friendly hug. If you don't mind, Early, I'd like to see little Jen for myself. Pictures are good, but... John shrugged to an understanding Early as he walked over to Susan and the baby. It's been an interesting few years, huh, Early? Jen asked. Yes, it has. It took some work and some determination, but I think Susan and I came out better than we were before. Yes, you did, but can I ask you something? What made you decide to trust Susan again? Early got a faraway look on his face before he answered. The reaction on her face when I asked her, what if I had told her that I was home while she was away? She couldn't think of what to do. She was afraid of losing our marriage and me. I knew that I should try to save our marriage then. That's strangely romantic. I was hoping it was something I did, since you named you little girl after me. Jennifer giggled. Early let out a laugh. No, that is so we could remember who to blame. Blame, Jennifer exclaimed. Yes, blame. If you hadn't have gotten sick, then Susan would have never left. I would have never found out. Susan would have never gone over to your house to talk with you. If she hadn't done that, she would have never gotten sick from you. She wouldn't have been on antibiotics when we started sharing a bed again. And they wouldn't have interfered with her birth control, so... So it's all my fault? Jennifer asked in mock indignation. Yup, and for punishment you have to be the best godmother ever known. I think I can do that early, Jennifer said, watching Susan play with her 8-month-old daughter while Michael, Susan and Early's 3-year-old son watched on. That's a price I'd be willing to pay. Thank you for joining us on Unraveled Tales. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel and stay connected with our community. I look forward to reading your valuable advice and working together to make our channel the best it can be.